also like considering research on this podcast, came up across a new term through you, which is SIBO, and the concept of low stomach acid. So, in like a very basic way, could you just explain what SIBO and low stomach acid is, and what preconceptions that we've had about how our gut works and what the actual facts are?
Correct. So I think 90% of the people that I know, and I meet, obviously a lot of people who come to me have these issues, but just generally in conversation, I think I've literally heard 90% of the people say that they have acid reflux.
Right.
They wake up in the morning, they have acid reflux. They eat something spicy, they have acid reflux. They drink a lot in the night and they come back home and they're puking, they have acid reflux. So all of these different ways of acid reflux, but I don't think anybody's really tried to understand what it typically means. So coming down to most gastros, when you go to, and I'm not saying don't go to a doctor when you're not well, or don't try to understand what the doctor is telling you when you're not well. But what I'm trying to say is that typically when you go to a doctor and you have chronic acid reflux, what they will look for is that they will want to do an endoscopy if you don't get better with just basic antacids, PPIs, whatever they give you. And they will want to check for something called H. pylori. H. pylori is a bacteria which is present in all our bodies.
Right.
And it must be there in a certain quantity for the 80-20 balance as well.
Correct.
But when the balance tips off and you have more than what you need of H. pylori, and when it becomes excessive, it also becomes pathogenic for the system, where you'll see like people will see that they have ulcers in the stomach or in the esophageal lining. And that is normally caused by the predisposition of H. pylori bacterial infection. Now, what I'm trying to get at is that then doctors will say, okay, take antacids, take PPIs, take antibiotics. But what we really look at it from a functional medicine aspect is that in the first place, how did the H. pylori get there and survive? We have an extremely acidic stomach, okay, and the pH is like really, really strong. So if you put your hand in it, you'll burn your hand, there'll be nothing left. It's as acidic. Your stomach is like a pool of acid. And that is the only area where the acid should be, because any other kind of mucous membrane in the body, say your esophagus or otherwise, cannot handle that kind of acid. So when people say they have acid reflux, they have a lot of burning, they have a lot of discomfort, chest constriction. That's coming from the acid trickling up in an area where it cannot be, or where it's not conducive for that area of the body to manage or handle that acid. So typically what I'm getting to is that H. pylori is something that shows up typically when there is not enough acid. Now, when I'm coming to that, what I'm trying to say is that if there was enough acid, it's like when the lockdown, we all were washing our hands like 100 times a day.
Correct.
Okay, and we have anything that comes into the system, we want to try and keep hygiene. We want to, ensure that we are eating with clean hands. And that's the whole logic of avoiding any kind of microbial, invasion through whatever is on your skin or anywhere else, because microbes are everywhere, even when you can't see them. And the same thing is with the acid, because any food, water, anything that you take in, even the air, everything you take in, it is washed by the acid to ensure that it's like a checkpoint where the body says, okay, hey, any infection that's there that needs to kind of get taken care of in the stomach, and then the food moves forward to the small intestine for a little bit more breakdown and then absorption.
Correct.
So, but if that acid is not enough, an H. pylori can easily gate pass from your stomach and just be there in your system.
Due to having low stomach acid?
Exactly, because there is not enough acid to ensure that it couldn't make that entry further. So that is where the concept of low stomach acid comes in, because that is what we mean by saying that. So when we actually have a lot of antacids, people keep popping pills like that, take laxatives all the time, take Cremafin, I'm not saying that don't take it when you don't really need it, but you will lose the tolerance of the body being able to deal with any symptoms if you keep taking them over a period of time. And this is typically what happens, is that when there is a leaky gut or when there is low stomach acid, it is one of the main criteria to look at having a predisposition to SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. Now, most of, like I said in the very start, that most of our microbes live in the large intestine or the colon. More than 100 trillion organisms. They all are living in amazing synergy with each other. Parasites, fungi, bacteria, everything live there together. And they create an amazing ecosystem for us. But when over a period of time, because of several things, like there is stress, there is maybe malfunction of the valve of the intestine, small and large intestine, and many other things like food intolerances, what happens is the bacteria, good or bad, whatever they are, they translocate themselves from the large intestine to the small intestine.
Right.
where they should not be. Small intestine also doesn't house much bacteria. It's primarily the large intestine. And when they find themselves there, it's like you're eating something and you have a fermentation unit that is set up in your small intestine.
Correct.
So the moment you've eaten something, it's like you're making beer in your system all the time. Like you've eaten dals, it'll ferment it. You've eaten sugar, it'll ferment it. And it loves sugar. The bacteria love sugar, especially the bad bacteria love sugar. They proliferate on that. So when you do that and you have the small intestine, which is really compounded with so much bacteria, good or bad, when that kind of fermentation happens, it creates symptoms like burping, belching, a lot of upper stomach bloating. Like you just feel like no matter what you eat, what you do, your stomach just bloats the moment you eat. And a lot of people complain of that kind of a symptom as well. So that comes also from low stomach acid and the potential cause of having something called small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which often doesn't get diagnosed because people say, okay, it's just acidity, have this medicine, you'll take care of it.
That's so the usual diagnosis.
Exactly. So normally so they do give a rifaximin or they do give an antibiotic course to kill the bacteria, but often, a broad spectrum antibiotic will kill all the good bacteria as well, which you don't want. And that is where the whole cycle or the vicious cycle of the issues start, because you do it to kill the bacteria, but you'll end up killing the good ones. So that 80-20 becomes even worse. And then you've got into a soup of gut issues. So typically what you really need to do is obviously find a healthier way of taking care of the small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which is basically not feeding the bacteria what they like to eat. So the moment you start to eliminate sugars, even pulses they can't tolerate, a lot of foods. So there's something called a low FODMAP plan that people can follow while they have SIBO. Obviously, it needs to be very guided. It's a pretty tough plan to understand. So when they do that and they kind of don't feed, there's a die-off that happens of those bacteria. And that is a whole system or a process that you can use and then build up your acid back so that you have enough of like a, defense or a kind of a guard defense in your system all the time to take care of the food you're eating and ensure you don't have predisposition to infections.
Right.